Right now, fire crews are on the scene of a train derailment near Mosier, Oregon. A raging inferno ignited when those cars full of oil tipped over.
This is about 70 miles east of Portland. Mark Wright is live in our newsroom with the latest.
Now crews are focusing on moving the train cars that are not on fire and trying to keep them cool. The concern is the fire could heat that volatile crude oil inside those untouched tankers and cause them to explode. So the cars derailed at about 12:30 this afternoon in the Columbia River Gorge. Officials say the Union Pacific rail cars were carrying crude oil from North Dakota. At least one tank is leaking fuel right now, and it is on fire, as you can see. They may have to just let this thing burn itself out. About 50 homes in a nearby trailer park were evacuated, and others in a nearby town, they're on standby tonight in case this situation gets worse.
Well, it's horrific to have something like this happen anywhere, particularly in the incredibly gorgeous Columbia Gorge. So what I was pleased to see is the first responders acting so quickly.
So fortunately, no injuries or structural damage. At this point, officials don't know why the train cars derailed.
That was Mark Wright in the newsroom.
This is a live view of Mosier, Oregon right now. That's live. That giant plume of smoke you see there, which is visible for miles around Mosier, Oregon. It's coming from a burning tanker car full of crude oil. It's been burning since this afternoon. Just around 3 p.m. Eastern time, 11 cars of an oil train went off the tracks along the Columbia River in Oregon. And I can tell you tonight that all of these hours later, that fire does not appear to be getting any smaller. This is an aerial view of that tanker car fire about an hour and a half ago, which is 5 hours after the initial explosion. Boom, you see a new explosion there, and the fire seems to spread further. Union Pacific Railroad owns this oil train. The latest statement we have from them said that at least one car was on fire. It certainly looks like it may be more than one car at this point. Here's where this is happening. Again, this fire is still underway right now. The city of Mosier is about 70 miles east of Portland. It's in the Columbia River Gorge. Just a stunning stretch of that beautiful river right along the Oregon-Washington border. And you can see in some of this imagery here, this map imagery, you can see that the railroad tracks where this train derailed, the tracks run right along the Columbia River and right through Mosier. The train derailed near an overpass connecting to Interstate 84, I-84, the big highway that connects to Portland. A 23-mile-long section of that interstate was shut down this afternoon, remains closed this evening because of this oil train crash and this big fire. You can also see the Mosier Community School. It's an elementary school there, really just steps away from that blazing tanker car. That school was evacuated right after the derailment. We're told actually that all local schools were eventually evacuated. There's now a mandatory evacuation order in place for all homes and businesses within a half mile of this derailment. Emergency personnel have been going door to door, telling residents to prepare for what may be a wider evacuation order coming. Now, Union Pacific says no one was injured in this derailment. It was apparently a 96-car train. 11 cars of the 96 derailed. Those oil cars were carrying Bakken crude oil. We know that Bakken crude oil is more volatile and more prone to explosion than regular crude oil. The oil started in North Dakota. It was headed ultimately to Tacoma, Washington. Union Pacific and BNSF Railway and the Portland Airport, they all now say that they're sending foam to the site of this ongoing fire. They're sending specialized foam-equipped firefighting trucks to the scene. Of course, they need foam because it's an oil fire. Crude oil fires are so hot that water is basically useless against them, and you need this specialized way to fight those fires. In a lot of cases, like the giant oil train explosion at Mount Carbon, Virginia last year, authorities have had to just let these train fires burn themselves out. That can take days. This is obviously not the first time we have seen one of these oil trains derail and explode. There's a reason people call them bomb trains. But Mosier, Oregon, and other Oregon towns along the Columbia River, they have been particularly on edge in the last few months about the possibility of something like this happening to them. It's only this past November that Union Pacific started hauling Bakken crude oil along the Oregon side of the river down those rail tracks. In January of this year, local county commissioners unanimously adopted a resolution opposing these kinds of oil shipments through their county, in part because hundreds of schools and childcare facilities were within a half mile of the railroad tracks that these bomb trains were going down. Emergency responders testified at that county commissioners meeting that it was not a matter of if there would be an oil spill or a fire from a wrecked train, not a matter of if, but when. And when our Portland affiliate, KGW, got a few minutes with President Obama the following month, one of the things that their reporter pressed him on was the danger of oil trains that has been such a matter of local concern. And now today, on the banks of the Columbia River in Mosier, Oregon, those fears right now, tonight, as we speak, are being realized. Pat Douris is a reporter with NBC's Portland, Oregon affiliate, KGW-TV. He joins us now near the site of today's train derailment. Pat, really appreciate your time tonight. Can you just orient me as to what I'm seeing behind you, what you can see from your position there, how far away you are from the explosion?
Sure, we're about a mile from where the train is still on fire. It's kind of changed its appearance within the last 5 or 10 minutes. I believe they're starting to hit the rail cars now with water on the sides. As you mentioned, you don't try and put it on the oil because that just spreads it. It doesn't put the fire out, but they're trying to cool down the sides. And we also were told that there was foam that was brought in from Union Pacific, and also the BNSF Railroad brought some in from the Tri-Cities area. And they may have now finally put that on as well, because we've been here for 5-6 hours and it has just been a black column of smoke, unrelenting. Although it does look like now they're starting to take some action against it.
Pat, do we have any information at this point as to why it might have derailed, and indeed how many cars have exploded, how many cars have caught fire?
No is the short answer. I'm sure there'll be a huge investigation into why it derailed. We do know from the Oregon Department of Transportation that this very stretch of track was inspected 2 months ago. They found something like 31 what they called minor problems, and we're told that all of those were fixed. So very unclear why this derailment happened right here. It's right by the little town school and right by the sewage treatment plant. Fortunately, no one hurt. But a very dangerous situation, and I'm sure a lot of questions about what happened and why it happened right here.
Yeah, Pat, you mentioned the sewage plant there. Obviously, the Columbia River is nationally famous for a reason. You just look at the pictures of the Columbia River Gorge. Anybody who's familiar with that part of the world, you know, your heart sort of aches for the river as well as for the human impact here and the potential environmental impact. Do we know anything about the specific consequences of that sewage plant being so close? Do we know anything about the river or spillage or anything else in terms of the environmental impact?
Well, interesting questions. We've been asking those all day. They have a person here in town called the water master who's in charge of the sewage plant and all the water. He told me that he was concerned that as the fire continued to grow, that it might somehow impact the plant and there might be raw sewage that spilled into the Columbia River. So far, that has not happened. And when I talked to him about a half hour ago, he said the chances of that happening are greatly diminished. So he doesn't think it's going to happen. It is burning by a creek called Rock Creek that then does feed directly into the Columbia. But the Washington Department of Ecology sent out a tweet that they had flown over the area about 5 o'clock local time, so a little while ago, and did not see any oil that had gotten into that creek or gotten into the river. It's difficult to tell from this vantage point, but there are 4 or 5 boats that are now out on the river, and we've seen a boom stretched not too far offshore, just in case there is some sort of a leakage or spill. It seems with this much oil that's burning down there, and from our camera shots from the helicopter, it looked like there were at least 3 of those tanker cars on fire. It does seem likely that at least some is going to get into the river.
Pat Douris, reporter with KGW-TV, out there all day covering this oil train fire. Pat, I know you got a lot of local responsibilities. Thank you for making time for us tonight. Really good to have you here.
You bet. My pleasure.
I look forward to the day when I get to stop meeting good local reporters like Pat this way, because I'm covering more bomb trains that are going off in beautiful places all over this country. The transport of oil by rail is one of these niche stories that sort of couldn't get more specific in terms of thinking about a risk to our country. But boy, does that just keep happening and happening and happening. And these train tracks going right through towns all over this country. I so look forward to us fixing this problem as a country. We'll be right back.